Yeah.
Cool. I'm going to be teaching tonight out of the book, Men Are Like Waffles, Women Are Like Spaghetti. Pretty awesome. And I'm going to talk about communication for a little bit. You know, something that every time I come across something new, even though we've talked about communication, I don't think we can talk about it enough sometimes. You know, there are some subjects, especially in marriage, you know, we can talk about finances, we can talk about adultery, we can talk about communication, we can talk about you feeling special, date night. There's so many subjects. Children, raising children, empty nesters, whatever it is. We can talk about some amazing subjects. But the bottom line through all those subjects is communication. Really. If you didn't communicate about what you're going through or what you're going to buy or what you're going to spend, then it's going to affect your finances. If you didn't communicate and make your wife and husband feel special, then they're going to step out of the relationship to find that need and get it met. And it's true. So, communication, whatever it is, date night, I'm not feeling special. You don't date me, you don't, well, you stop talking about taking me. You always, we said that Fridays was date night, but we don't do anything. You know, so I'm not going to bug you. If it's important to you, you're going to say something to me. If it doesn't matter, then you don't bring it up. But it's all about that talking part, guys, that C word. And as Nora's making notes in her computer, she goes, I'm going to call it the C word. It's kind of like a bad word or something, but it's funny. So, men are like waffles, women are like spaghetti. Men are like waffles in the fact that the waffle has all these individual squares. And for most men, I mean, some of us guys are pretty good multitaskers, but sometimes in communication, you know, if you're, you know, you can't, you know, my wife, I told her, you can't sit there and just talk about one subject and then change gears and talk about somebody else in the middle of that. It was like a stream, like a spaghetti. It went from one and it touches another spaghetti on a bowl, a plate, and all these, and it's like talking from her mom to going on vacation, to going to New York, coming back, and guess what I had for dinner last night? Did you have dinner with your mom or was it dinner with me? No, it was last week, silly. I was talking about my mom. Oh, okay. Slow down. Can you kind of chop that into squares so I can I don't understand where you're at. You lost me. When we do that, so that's the difference in our personality as I was talking about in the book. So in communication, I want to continue what we talked about last week, which was pretty awesome what God gave me, because according to Ephesians 5, and let's turn there, Ephesians 5, which talks about husbands loving their wives as Christ loved the church. So we'll read that again. But remember the washing of the water of the Word? And then Jesus said, I have cleansed you with my word, in John 15, I believe it was. And he's talking about the same thing about his word, Jesus being the word. God's telling us, by your communication with your spouse, you purify your wife, guys. And let me have a little survey here, ladies. Is, let's say, the top two needs in your life, or top 3 needs in your life is communication? Raise your hand, ladies. Top two, top 3. Okay, so we know that it's communication. Talk to me, dude. I think one thing that is so important too is that for some of us, even as wives, sometimes wives, depending on your personality, can be an introvert. Some wives, when they get upset and bothered, they just shut down. And the husband's the communicator. And he's the one saying, oh, wait a minute, we need to talk about this. And she's all, I don't want to talk about it right now. But wait a minute, you said you wanted to talk about this. You know, and you're chasing her around the house and pecking her to talk about it, and then a different fight starts. So be careful with that. If your spouse, if the wife is not much of a communicator when she's upset, you should know your wives. You should. You know, and sometimes your wife will tell you that. You should know me by now. I thought you said you knew me. Right? I know. We've had those conversations. And I do know you. But, you know, and then your wife says, I haven't changed. I'm still the same person. I have the same needs. All right. But it's communication. It's talking to me, you know. And it's giving that consideration. So Ephesians 5. And we're just going to read it. 25 and 26. And husbands, love your wives. Husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church. And he gave himself for her that he might sanctify her and cleanse her with the washing of the water of the Word. Love, your love, will cleanse her. Your love will sanctify her. Sanctify means to set apart. It's like a coffee filter. It separates it. That's what your love's doing. All right, I know. I'll have some coffee after. with the washing of the water of the Word. It separates, cleansing, sanctify by your communication. It could be encouragement. And you know, something I came across, and I was reading this, let's see if I can find it, I'm going to jump out of my notes here, is when you're asking, when your spouse is talking to you about something, let's say this for instance, your wife is sharing her heart with you, something that's bothering her. You know, when your wife is going through it, this is what happens in our relationships. The wife is upset at you. Hubby's in the doghouse, so she's not going to talk about her day with him. She's only going to talk to him about why she's mad at him. Okay? But when he comes to say, how was your day? She just gives you the quiet thing. And you're like, I want to talk about my day. I want to talk about what's going on. I want to talk about this. You said the other day about your mom. You said the other day about the car, about the bills. And she doesn't want to talk about it. She don't talk about nothing. I only want to talk about what matters and why you hurt me. You're like, so you're like floundering because you're like, I got a lot to talk about. She's all, you want to talk about everything but what matters. And I'm like, ah. But when you will, and so when you have those opportunities, when you're not in the doghouse, this is practice here. This is something I haven't learned. When you're in those opportunities, when she's actually sharing with you, guess what, babe? You know what? Oh my gosh! And you capitalize on that. I mean, it's like that's an opportunity. She's talking to me about the stuff. I mean, she's opening up. This is good. This is good. Be into it, because I hate being in those modes where she only talks to me when she's mad. I hate that because it just dampens the whole night. It's like a wet blanket. It's just blah. I don't want to, you know, and you go to bed and you're just wondering, and then she falls asleep and you're like, ah, what a day, I hate this. And then, how can I get this right? Strive for the moment so that when there is peace and when she is talking to you, and just listen. Listen to those opportunities and those conversations. When she's sharing her heart with you, and you acknowledge what she's talking about, then if she says, I just you know, can't stand it when I feel like this and is going on. When you acknowledge and say, you know what, I understand what you're saying. And you acknowledge her feelings instead of questioning her, why do you feel that way for? That's weird. Then you smash her feelings, you smash what she feels. What she says is not important. But if you do the opposite and acknowledge what she's saying and say, you know what, I didn't know you thought about it that way. I didn't know you felt that way about that. What you did was acknowledge how she feels, and you made her feel loved. It's powerful. It's simple, but it works. You made her feel loved. I mean, if she's feeling loved, your relationship grows. Then she wants to open up more. And it's the same on the other end. If the husband is always told what he's not doing right, and he's not told what he's doing good, there's got to be a balance. If he's always getting clobbered on the head, and then he's like, you know what? I'm not going to argue with you because I don't want to. I'll end up losing. Because you're my wife, and my end result is to raise my voice and cuss and be this man that, whoa, you hear that boom, that voice that we got that just scares and makes the baby cry. Well, it's like, I don't want to do that. And I feel like sometimes that's my end result, just to get my wife to zip it. And if I do that to her, then woohoo, it's over, man. Kaboom, kabam. The nuclear bomb went off because you raised your voice at the top of your deep, booming, masculine, and it just shut her down. It shut her down. Okay, so I don't want to get to that point. I want to avoid those situations. So if the husband is being clobbered by the wife, communication. Not being told what he's doing right, not being anything, it doesn't matter. You just told him a bunch of stuff that he did wrong. Is there anything that he's doing right? And if he is, let him know. And I know sometimes wives, I'm not saying I know it all, but I do know this little bit, that you're afraid to say the good things that he's done, because then he's going to run with it and forget about the rest. I'm afraid to give you props, because then you're just going to park right there and go, yes, 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 I'm good.
Ruffling.
You know, like that rooster thing. She said, I'm good. And then she's like, honey, but I don't want to take the wind out of his sail, but you know, I did say you got stuff to work on, right? I mean, you don't forget about that stuff too, pumpkin, okay? And yeah, I know I got to work on that. But yeah, you said I was doing good. She's afraid, because he stays right there. And she's like, That's a victory from yesterday. You won the football game last week. Now let's do it again this week. We got 16 more games to go. You know, let's do it again. Let's do it again. Don't surf on the victory of yesterday. And that's what scares a wife from telling you you're great. It is. Because then you won't change.
Yeah.
You won't be progressive to become better. So yeah, that's why I want to give him praise. I want to pat him on the back. I want to tell him he's awesome. He is awesome. I love him. I'm still here with him because I love him. If I didn't love him, I wouldn't be here. That's her. He's like, I know, you know, we're all not getting along and stuff like that, but I'm not leaving. I'm staying here even though we're miserable. And the wife's like, I'm miserable. I'm out. She's all, I love him. I'm staying. So I'm not going anywhere. So he's all, well, she still wants me, so I'm good. I'm staying. Even though I'm in trouble. I'm good. I'm not going anywhere. But I'm not changing. So communication is when she or he shares something, you acknowledge that, you reaffirm what they're talking about, and like, oh, I didn't know that meant a lot to you. You know, instead of like, why? What do you mean? Why do you? You're questioning what she feels. You're questioning what he feels. When you reaffirm that, then that allows the elevator to open and the relationship to go deeper.
Wow.
You actually agree with what I just said? Oh my God. You actually reaffirm what I just told you that you, oh, that was nice of you. Thank you. You actually believe me. Deeper you go. More solid your relationship. Washing with the water of the Word. All right. So, I want to read something to you guys. It starts off with a quote from a relationship. This is a conversation between a husband and a wife. Reading it out of the book here. Okay? It says, husband here, his name is Blake. He says, all right. He tells his wife, let's try this again. He said, reaching out and holding Jeannie, his wife's hands, in a way that says, he reaches out to her hands and he says, like, you're safe with me. He says, let's try this again. He says, you mentioned to me, he says to Jeannie, you mentioned that I don't listen. Tell me what you mean by that. That's good. I tell you how I feel, and you just tell me how I should act, she says cautiously. She says, I tell you something about what I'm feeling, and then you tell me what to do. And she says that cautiously. So he says, I just tell you how to act? He responded with a curious voice. Blake, when you tell me what to do, as if it's a simple thing, you make me feel stupid. Jeannie said hesitantly, becoming more vulnerable. She's feeling. I make you feel stupid, Blake asked with genuine surprise in his voice. He had always thought Jeannie was one of the brightest people he's ever met. She sensed his genuine concern and was amazed at herself when she blurted out, it makes me feel the same way my parents used to when they told me I was an accident and I never wished to be born. You went from this level to this level. Did you catch that? Thanks, bro. You went from a level, thank you. You went from a level of just, you make me feel stupid. Wait a minute. Help me understand that. I make you feel stupid. I'm sorry. I didn't realize that. Can you help me explain that to me so I can understand so I don't make you feel stupid anymore? I'm sorry. Because one person in this relationship makes the other feel like inferior and you're condescending, you're demeaning, you make them feel dumb because you have a little bit more intelligence, and maybe that spouse has a little bit more common sense than you, but your intelligence capitalizes on their common sense and you make them feel dumb. But the spouse says, it all comes back because my parents used to tell me that when I was little. That I was the accident, and I should never have been born. So you telling me that sends me there. I didn't know that. Your relationship just went deeper. Instead of him, now he's soft and sorry. They told you that? Blake said in astonishment. They had been married for 5 years, and Blake was amazed they had never heard this about his wife before. She said, I was 16. I couldn't believe it at first when my dad said it. We were having a really big fight at the time, she says. I was being pretty difficult, I admit, but I don't think I deserved that. I looked at my mom and asked if that was true, if I was an accident.
that I was unwanted, when she just looked down at the ground in silence. I felt my heart fall through my feet. I've tried hard to cover it up, all my pain all these years, but it keeps coming back to haunt me. Whenever you treat me as though I don't know what I am doing, I feel the same pain again. He says, I'm sorry, Jeannie, I didn't know. I know, Blake, but I try to tell you myself, but you don't mean to make me feel this way, but sometimes it just overwhelms me. I didn't know whether to tell you or just to be angry with you, to protect myself, she says. As Blake embraced Jeannie, he marveled at his new sense of warmth and trust in the relationship. He convinced himself that night he would be wise if he learned how to listen more. Listen to your spouse. There's a reason that they say what they say. You probably don't like the way they were brought up. You probably disapprove of the way your spouse's parents raised them. But it's not a reason to throw a rock at her for him. You work with that. Me and my wife both came from broken homes. My parents were abusive. My dad was abusive to my mother, excuse me. And in her home there was the same, there was abuse, there was dysfunctional and things like that. So what? I don't want the history to repeat itself. So we, on our knees, in prayer, seeking God, please change our lives. I don't want, did we have that in our relationship where that monster tried to come up? Oh yeah, the old Hernandez way, the way I was brought up would stick its ugly head up in our marriage. The way she was brought up would stick its ugly head up in our marriage. And we had to talk through that instead of just digging our feet into the sand and saying, this is who I am and you're going to have to deal with it. I can tolerate the fact that you left your socks on the floor. That's not a big deal. But it's the way you handle relationships. It's the way that you talk to me, the way you put me down, the way you don't acknowledge the fact that what I'm feeling is valid. You just, I don't care, you still. Wait a minute, stop. I didn't know I made you feel that way. Can you shed some light on that? Because I didn't realize I put you down and made you, take you back down to those feelings when you were a child. That's huge. And now you get a chance to be closer to your spouse than anybody else knows your spouse at all. So when you're talking to each other, there's sometimes we've got to go back to the basics. In talking to each other, you have to acknowledge and like reaffirm, or like your spouse shares something with you, say it back to them. Repeat the words or phrases that they talk about to you. You mean that this is what it does? It takes you back to when you were a child. I didn't realize that. You just acknowledge that you're into the conversation. And then at the very end, guys, how about, doesn't matter guys and girls, well, how about if you just say, you know what, that reminds me, when I was a child, I had this and this happen to me, and that kind of reminds me of the same situation. Connect.
And healing starts to take place there together.
Healing takes place because you connect, because you both resemble the pain of what it was like when you were growing up and feeling the way you did, or whatever that was that person did, that you connect with each other and you take your relationship to the next level and go deeper. The goal that you have in your conversation, this is something to read to you. The goal in having an intimate conversation with your spouse is not to analyze your spouse's emotions. You're not there to fix them. God's the one that's going to bring the change. You're there to journey with them and be there for them. You're not there to analyze it and come up with some kind of solution to make them feel better and maybe they can stop acting like that. The goal is to grow a little closer and to reaffirm your love. The solution is not to try to fix them, to stop acting like that, but to reaffirm each other's love because you just admitted, I didn't know that. And you know what, I'm here for you. I care about you and I'm sorry that you went through that. And I'm going to take care of you. And like Blake said at the beginning, he held her hand and says, when you're with me, everything's going to be okay. That's what your spouse needs. That's what wives need in a relationship, is for you to hug them, despite what's going on. Like, we have to move out of this house someday. Okay? And so I hug my wife and say, you know what? Everything's going to be okay. It is. I'll take care of it. I'll deal with it. And we'll make it. It's my job. Because if not, then Mama, the little leader, is going to start thinking, well, we gotta. Did you call? Did you do? I already took care of it. And this is what happened, and this is how I found out. This is what's going to happen here. This is how we're going to do it. I communicate it back to reassure her stability. That's our job. So, go over a couple things and then we'll be done here. The basic elements, guys, of listening is for those note takers. The basic elements of listening is attentiveness. There's 3 words: attentiveness, paying attention, attentiveness, empathy. We talked about empathy once, and the compassionate questions. Care about what they're feeling, and ask the questions with compassion. Turn off the TV, put your phone on vibrate, and pay attention. Even with kids. The kids are right there, they're talking to you, they're pouring their heart out with you. Your teenager's finally opening up to you about the things you've been praying about. Oh, whoa, hang on. Off. What? What did you say? I want to talk. I want to hear what you have to say. I'm sorry. Focus in on that moment before you lose them. And they say, Dad, Mom, you're not paying attention to me. I don't want to get there. And if I am, I'm sorry. I don't want to lose you. Attentiveness, empathy, putting yourself in their place, and asking compassionate questions. All right. The key to promoting intimacy is giving the permission of your spouse to share at a vulnerable level. That's the level that we want. Promoting intimacy in your home, personal relationship with your spouse, is allowing your spouse to share at a level where they can be vulnerable. If your spouse senses permission to share without being judged or in a fixed category, for instance, they share something and you say, "You're so dramatic. You're so emotional. You're so high maintenance." Don't put them in a category. You're just like your mom. Don't put them, you're just like your dad. Don't categorize. Allow them to be who they need to be in that relationship with you. And you create that safe environment. And don't categorize or judge. And give them the opportunity to be who they need to be with you.
Yes.
Then your spouse will share more about what's going on and inside their hearts. So like I said, if you want a deeper relationship with your spouse, it's repeating the phrases that they told you. It's relating the stories that you can relate to them with. Yeah, I understand what you're saying because that reminds me of the time when I went through this. You're connecting. And that's personal intimacy. It sounds like a relationship that you have with Jesus. The only way you're going to get to know God is prayer. And reading His Word. And spending time in worship. And loving and adoring Him. The way you're going to get to know your spouse is praise them. Tell them they're doing a great job. Tell them the truth in love. Truth in love. Spending time with them. Getting to know them. So we are different. Waffles and spaghetti. But there's levels that we can talk. And that's by dropping our guard. And even our defenses. And be open to each other. Does anybody have any questions about anything? Or you want to share something?
I do.
Chris?
What you were saying is exactly what